Hello and welcome to the topic Emile Durkheim and his theory of educational sociology. Introduction. David Emile Durkheim was a French sociologist. His main aim was to establish sociology as a recognized academic discipline, and he succeeded in that. He formally established it as an academic discipline. Along with Karl Marx and Max Weber, he is considered as the principal architect of modern social science and father of sociology. He was also France's first professor of sociology. He taught pedagogy all his life to primary school teachers. His ideas of education can be summarized as follows. Education is a social fact. The focus of education depends on the society's notion of an ideal man. For each society, education is the means by which it acquires the essential conditions of its own existence. He defined education as the influence exercised by adult generations on those that are not yet ready for social life. Its object is to develop in the child a certain number of physical, intellectual, and moral states which society demands. He saw education as a tool for socialization of the youth. There are two beings, individual being and social being. Education plays an important role in shaping the social being. This covers religions, beliefs, moral beliefs, and traditions. In Emile Durkheim's view, educational systems reflect underlying changes in society. Educational systems of the world are a construct built by society. As a result, the society naturally seeks to reproduce its collectively held values, beliefs, norms, and conditions through education. Educational systems represent the past stages in the development of society, and the past stages leave its imprint on the system. If we look at educational systems that way, we can say that the history of education and human development can be traced. Or in other words, the development of a society can be reconstructed from the educational system. Educational systems reflect the changes that happened in the society. The reflection of such changes is made possible because educational systems were the mirrors of society to some extent. Changes in society manifest themselves in the educational system because it is constructed by society's members to express their needs. This is to say, society constructs its educational system to promote and reproduce its ideal of what a human being should be to be part of a society. Educational system, according to Durkheim, also becomes a constraint. He uses this term to connote the cultural determination and the influence of socialization. To further explain, education becomes a constraint when certain socially given ideas and values are internalized by individuals. These human beings thereby acquire certain beliefs, wants, and feelings and act in certain ways. This becomes an imposition of ideas and values on the individual. Durkheim says that education is a continuous effort to impose ways of seeing, feeling, and acting on a child. Module 2. Common Beliefs. The concept of common belief is very central to Durkheim's philosophy of education. A society has some common beliefs, and these beliefs play a crucial role in education. The individuals or groups of them may have different beliefs and values, but still, the ideal of what the child should become arises from the common beliefs of society's members. To an extent, there is a set of underlying beliefs common enough among all stratum of society. These beliefs manifest themselves, and sometimes the manifestation takes altered form to suit the nature of the institutions. He argues that system of education arises from the common beliefs of society's members and hence it's a product of collective, not individual, thought. Thus, a system of education is a product of the collectivity. This system projects those values that are expressed by the conscious collective. As a society's collective values change, the educational system reflects these changes. Durkheim points out this tendency in his observations on the relationship between education, religion, and society's ideal view of a human being. The educational system undergoes constant changes as the thoughts and values of the society change. This, according to him, is a necessity. Otherwise, an educational system would be teaching values inconsistent with society. This will lead to the failure of the educational system. In order to have a system of education that's beneficial to the society, the constant changes should be properly incorporated. Yet, various social groups or social strata may have different beliefs. What happens in the educational systems is that certain parts of the system will be connected towards particular groups. The parts of the educational system that are geared toward a particular group will reflect that social group's values. There will be some ideals and values common to all the groups. These ideals common to all the groups will be reflected in a strong manner. Durkheim says that society can survive only if there is a sufficient degree of homogeneity among its members. Education creates and reinforces this homogeneity by generating the essential similarities that social life demands in the mind of the child. When the values and beliefs of a society change, they may become manifest in the educational system in a clearer way. For instance, if the norms of a society shift toward placing a greater emphasis on merit, the educational system may reflect this change. Educational system may institute and promote a system of examinations to determine a student's place in the social organization of society. The major changes that occur over a period of time leaves an imprint on the educational system. For example, at certain point in history, society had made social status contingent upon birthright. The educational system reflected this by admitting only those from the higher social levels into the prestigious educational institutions. Later, the value merit came to be recognized. Thus, each person started gaining access to the higher level or prestigious institutions through examination rather than birthright. However, the imprint of the aristocratic system is likely to still exist in the educational system in some subordinate manner or marginal form. Thus, a systematic tracing of the imprints left by such changes in the educational system reveal underlying shifts in social organization and values. But the new educational system retains some parts of the old educational system. Durkheim says that the aspects of the old educational system that are still representative of society's values are retained by the new one. Events and ideas from the past have contributed to the formation of the principles that guide education. The principles that guide education, in turn, reflect the values of society. Durkheim understood and demonstrated this cycle in his works. He argued that studying the history of education and relating educational change to wider societal changes will help one anticipate the future and understand the present. He has emphasized the importance of teachers in relation to the changes that happen in society. There are also specific means through which the educational system reflects underlying changes. One of these is through the work of teachers who represents the greater culture in schools. According to Durkheim, teaching is merely a shortened version of the intellectual culture of the adult. Teachers help to develop the ideals and knowledge of society in their students. Thus, Changes in both the method and content of teaching necessarily embody many important and substantial changes in the greater culture. He wrote about the role of religious institutions too. He has analyzed the influence of church on the society of his times. The church also led educational systems to reflect changes in society. The church served as a channel through which societal change became manifested in the schools. The educational system, in turn, also significantly reflected the role of the church in society. Durkheim was concerned with how such systems as education could help a society to deal with the changes brought by modernization and industrialization. For him, it's not enough to merely identify society's past and present values. It is also necessary that we discover those values that best suited for conditions of society. Durkheim's sociology of education was a multifaceted one. His approach to analyzing educational systems was both empirical and prescriptive. Many of a system's existing values would have been dictated by such formerly powerful institutions as the church. In France, Durkheim analyzed whether such values were appropriate in period of change brought by modernization. He tried to investigate their compatibility to the kind of society that was unfolding in France in the wake of a new century. He expressed that many of the values inherited from the past had begun to lose their appeal. The result of such a loss of interest was the dissolution of moral beliefs that led to cultural degradation. To identify a new set of moral beliefs that could again bind society and act as a cure to the malaise was the challenge faced by the thinkers of his time. He tried to uncover a new set of common beliefs that will be suited for a nation undergoing modernization. Once these beliefs are captured, education would be a vehicle through which they could be systematically disseminated. Education then not only reflected changes in society, but could also be used to impel society to change. Durkheim argued that this is one of the paths to the reintegration of society. Durkheim found education to reflect underlying changes in society. As such, he used educational systems as a window into society's organization and values, both past and present. He made an systematic attempt to identify broad historical continuities. He tried to interpret them as evidence of cultural trends. Module 3, Schools and Education. In an article written in 1911 entitled Education, Its Nature and Role, published by Durkheim, argues that every society has a system of education which is imposed on individuals. Every society has a certain human ideal. This ideal defines what a person should be from the intellectual, physical, and moral points of view. This ideal, according to him, is the crux of education. Through education, the individual being is turned into a social being. The homogeneity achieved through education is not a permanent one. There are societies characterized by a division of labor. In such societies, with greater the differentiation between various types of occupation, more heterogeneity is necessary. He saw education as a methodical socialization. This view corresponds to the need for any society to secure the basis of its conditions of existence. It begins from birth within the family and it becomes systematic at school. As a result, the school becomes the focus of social continuity when it comes to the transmission of values, standards, and knowledge. Hence, Durkheim's practically exclusive concern was with the school system, including universities. Durkheim focused his study of the socialization of the young generations in schools. Within the school system, he sometimes referred to the school system as the machine and viewed as an organ fulfilling a function. If society is a system, school can be seen as a subsystem. Durkheim's originality lay in demonstrating that although this subsystem is dependent on the social system, it possesses the structural features peculiar to any social system. This confers a relative autonomy upon schools. Like any social system, it is subjected to forces of permanence and forces of change. Durkheim adopts an analytical approach that shows how the education since the Middle Ages has been marked by a series of changes. These changes resulted from both new political and economic trends and from the emergence of new attitudes and needs. The overview proposed by Durkheim in his lectures demonstrates clearly that educational reforms reflect the general context and at the same time illustrate the way in which the school takes care of emerging needs. Durkheim looked at different kinds of societies and the function of education in such societies. He argued that in complex industrial societies, the school serves a function which cannot be provided by the family or by the peer group. Membership of the family is based on kinship relationships. Membership of the peer group is based on personal choice. The ownership of society as a whole is based on neither of these principles. Schools provide a much wider context to individuals. Individuals must learn to cooperate with those who are neither their kin nor their friends. The school provides a context where these skills can be learned. Looked at that way, school is a society in miniature and model of the social system. A student is expected to interact with other members of the school community in terms of a fixed set of rules. The experience prepares him or her for interacting with members of society as a whole. Durkheim believed that a school rule should be strictly enforced. Punishments should be implemented to show offenses are met with consequences. He also believed that it be made clear to transgressors why they were being punished. This helps students to grasp that it was wrong to act against the interests of the social group as a whole. This will enhance self-discipline. Through punishments, children will understand that their misbehavior can damage society as a whole. Module 4, Criticisms of Durkheim. Durkheim is said to be the greatest thinker on education of his century. His ideas influenced later thinkers. His writing made education to be seen more seriously in the academic disciplines. However, his ideas were criticized too. The major criticisms of Durkheim are as follows. Durkheim assumed societies have a shared culture which can be transmitted through the educational system. His major ideas and concepts were based on the collective beliefs and values. But many countries such as Britain, France, and the United States are now multicultural. There are different cultures within such countries. People migrate to these countries on a wide scale, and that makes such societies more complex. It is therefore debatable whether there is a single culture on which schools could base their curriculum. In countries like India, the situation is more complex. Each state in the country has got a different culture and different language, and there are a number of religious communities too. In a country like India, his ideas of collective values cannot be simplistically applied. The second major criticism comes from Marxists. They argue that educational institutions tend to transmit a dominant culture. This dominant culture takes into account only the interests of the ruling class. In that way, education is not a way to mold the individual. On the other hand, it is a tool to control the masses. It erases differences and subordinates some values and cultures. Recently, there have been many emerging perspectives like the New Right and New Labor. These perspectives on education have tended to emphasize the economic importance of education. The value of education, according to these theories, is hugely economical. Such theories have downplayed the significance of transmitting a shared culture argued by Durkheim. In his works, Durkheim gave importance to the role and functions of schools, but later thinkers and researchers on education have questioned whether in practice schools to act in the way Durkheim describes. On the basis of a study of comprehensive schools, recent studies have argued that education in modern countries often fails to transmit shared values. Fostering social solidarity also does not happen in schools as Durkheim anticipated. Modernization and globalization changed the education scenario. In contemporary education, lots of emphasis is given individual competition through the exam system. Let us summarize the major points discussed in this session. In this unit, we have looked at the ideas and arguments of Emile Durkheim. His ideas of education are based on the ideas of social solidarity. He saw education not only as a tool for personal development, but also as a means for social cohesion. We have seen that he formulated his ideas based on his European industrial experience. And as a result, we cannot apply such theories to the other parts of the world which have different social experiences. This is said to be one of the major drawbacks of Durkheim's theory and ideas. Durkheim's most definitive intellectual move was to appraise industrial societies with intellectual equipment. It encouraged early sociologists to understand the continuity and change in the dynamics of human groups. Durkheim was concerned that industrialization and urbanization would weaken the traditional forms of group cohesion, the family, the village, the church. He believed that if modern societies were to foster the solidarity of their members, they needed to devise novel means for producing solidarity. This, according to him, was the job of formal secular schooling. Schools should educate young people in such a way that will knit the society together. Durkheim's conception of schooling as a universalizing glue holding modern societies together often appeared nostalgic, reactionary, and even dangerous. Now, you can try to answer these questions here. 1. What's the role of schools in complex industrial societies? 2. What's the Marxian criticism of Durkheim? 3. What's the role of teachers according to Durkheim's educational theory? 4. What's the meaning and significance of the term constraint in Durkheim's theory? How does multiculturalism and cultural pluralism challenge Durkheim's arguments? What are the major criticisms raised against Durkheim? Now you can go through these books for further reference. Emile Durkheim, His Life and Work, a Historical and Critical Study by Stephen Lukes, published by Stanford University Press, 1985. Emile Durkheim by Kenneth Thompson, published by Routledge, 2002. Hope that you have enjoyed this session. We can meet again with another topic soon. Till then, take care.